welcome back to Case Studies. I'm here with one of my heroes, one of my good friends, Chad Lewis. And I've been looking forward to do this one for a while because there's, some of these stories that are pure gold that, I've had the chance to hear, whether it's a long bike ride or whether it's a hike or whatever it is. And I'm excited to dive into them. There's also a couple of them that, want to go deeper and go figure it out. And so anyway, thank you for coming on the podcast.
I've been looking forward to this for a long time, so this is good.
Yeah, so Chad, you're a local guy, Orem High School. Athletic family, brother's athletic, dad was like a beast. He was a go-getter, kind of always pulling you guys around, but as far as like a D1 4-star prospect, that wasn't you growing up.
I wasn't anywhere close to the letter D. I wasn't anywhere close to the number 1. I loved jumping on the trampoline. I loved hiking, running, playing all the sports. But when it came to D1 athlete, when my brother Mike played at the University of Utah, it blew my mind. I couldn't believe that my brother was playing in college football.
Yeah.
And Wayne McQuivey came down and recruited him. Jim Fossil gave him a scholarship. To me, that was a miracle.
But Mike was like a great athlete, wasn't he?
He was a good athlete. He was a diver. So he had great body control.
Yeah.
And it came down to the last person to get a scholarship. And Jim Fossil in his office, head coach of the University of Utah, said, Mike, it's coming down to one of the last spots. Why should I give you a scholarship? And Mike said, because I can do a standing backflip. He said, what? Because I can do a standing backflip. He's like, right now? He said, yeah, right now. I want to see this. And so he said, let's go outside. They walked down the office, and Fossil's getting everyone out of the offices. Hey, come, I want you to see this. Come on, everyone come out. Everyone come out. So we got all the coaches, all the secretaries. They go out on the little concrete patio, and Mike hams it up, and he rips a standing backflip as a defensive end.
And he's like, what, 6'4",
He's 6'6".
Yeah, I mean.
At the time, he's light. He's 210, so we're skinny dudes, 215. I don't know what he was. And he lands the backflip, and Jim Fossil's looking at him. He's like, welcome to the University of Utah. Gave him a scholarship right there. Well, that freaked me out. I'm in 9th grade, and I couldn't believe that my brother was going to play college football. And that is what got the wheels going. But the problem was I was praying to God to allow my body to grow, and it was not happening. If you look at any pictures of me in junior high and high school, the chance of playing high school football were small. I didn't mature. I had no muscles. I had a lot of fight in here and in here. But when Mike did that, it was like...
That was the first time where the idea...
There was an idea. The seed was planted. And so as it goes, I finished my high school career. The University of Utah said, we'd love you to come walk on after your mission. Go and grow. I was accepted to BYU, and Jim Fossil said...
So you obviously played good enough that you were on that radar.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you
correct
didn't play great in high school. You just didn't have the tools.
Right.
You weren't you hadn't grown into your body yet.
That's right. So I went on my mission with the idea, if things worked out, maybe I'd go back to the University of Utah, walk on, play football. And as a missionary, I chose not to play football. Just come home, go to school at BYU, become a doctor like my dad. And I had a mission companion, Larry Harmer, who was going to play football at BYU and talked about BYU football for 2 years. And he pumped me up. I was like, bro, come down and play with me. You can do this. And I would think about it, and we'd laugh about it, and we'd talk about it and dream about it. And when I came home, I was still very skinny. My brother Mike was playing in the bowl game at BYU or University of Utah. First bowl game in decades. And I remember talking to McBride, and he looked at me. He's like, do you want to play? And I was like, no, I'm going to BYU. I'm just going to go to school. And he's like, oh, okay. And I went to BYU. I walked onto the track team as a high jumper.
Because they probably, having Mike have the career that he had. They probably like that was an option for you.
I'm sure they knew my frame.
I'm sure they're looking at it saying, "Hey, we like the Lewis brothers."
That's right. That's right. Mike was the flying Ute, number 90 up there. His dream was to skydive the game ball for the Utah BYU game for game time. And McBride's like, yeah, you can do that, until it was like the week of the game. He's like, no, you can't do that.
Come on.
It's like, bro, you promised me I could skydive the game ball in. And so I walk on to the high jump team at BYU. I'm thinking, my dad's had a stroke, wiped away any finances we would have. I'm paying school by myself. I would love to get a scholarship. So I thought, well, let's go scratch out something with this track team. I'm a jumper. I'll high jump. And so I did that. I walked onto the high jump team. I started jumping a little bit. And my friends were in the annex. Tyler Anderson, Tim Nowatzki. I played football with Tyler at Orem High School. They were playing catch in the indoor where I'm high jumping. And they're like, bro, you need to come play football. And I knew what it would take to play football. And I was like, I don't know that that's possible. And Larry Harmer and my brother Mike were saying, you need to play football. And it was Larry Harmer that finally said, have you talked to the coaches yet? And I'm like, nah, I'll talk to them. Because, this dream of walking on it was our conversation. And finally he got mad at me one day, first time in our relationship. And he said, you need to pray about it. If you pray about it, I will never bug you again for the rest of your life. And I committed to him. I said, I'll pray about it. And I did. I prayed about it like my life depended on it. And it was a week or two. And I remember in my basement, in bed, getting an absolute answer, a divine answer to play football that changed my life. So I went the next day with confidence to talk to Coach Pella and Coach Chow. And I said, hey, I'd like to walk on. They knew my brother Mike. And they said, well, why aren't you playing up there? I said, because I'm here. I love BYU. I want to walk on. They're like, okay, come throw with the guys on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. and we'll see how you do. So I went to Tuesdays and Thursdays and I started playing catch with the team before spring ball. I remember the first day running and feeling fast. I couldn't believe it because I never felt like that in high school. And I remember catching everything. And I remember after that first practice, Coach Chow, who was the offensive coordinator forever at BYU, saying, no, tell me your story again. How many years do you have? And I said, I have 5 years to play for. And he just looked at me like, the way he looked at me, it was like
he was seeing something.
He saw something, and I'm 200 pounds.
Like day one,
6'6", 200.
Day one, he saw something.
But day one, he asked me about my years. As soon as he asked me, I knew there was a chance, and that chance grew until, I worked my butt off through summer, put on a little bit of weight. Went through training camp, and on Thursday of the first week of training camp at BYU, Lavelle Edwards after practice said, I want to see Chad Lewis after practice. And I'm just wondering what's going on. I started as 8th string tight end, and they're starting to move me up. And Coach Chow looked at me walking off the practice field, and he said, if this is what I think it is, you owe me a steak dinner, bud. And so I'm now thinking, dude, is this possible? I go and sit in Lavelle's office, and he said, I want to put you on full scholarship.
Before the season even started?
Correct.
So you lit it up.
Before my freshman year.
So you kind of lit it up from day one, though, from even before spring ball.
Yeah, it was working. I could catch, I could run.
It was coming together, and I think I've thought about that. All of the other stuff that you did when you were a little guy had to help so much when you grew into your body.
That's right.
Because you do the jumping and the diving and the flips and all that stuff. When you're little, it's like easy, but all of a sudden, like you grow into this big body, but you still have that, that frame, or those skills.
So I look back at Little League baseball and football and basketball and jumping on the trampoline and hiking and you're right, like everything from scouts to running night games in the neighborhood.
Go back to that moment when you're praying. because I think about this a lot. And I think about like these coincidences or these crossroads that you kind of like, you look back and you're like, it couldn't have happened any other way. Like it had to happen this way. Yeah. Go back to that moment. Like, well, you know.
If you look at my life, if it's linear, that is the hinge point. Certainly going on a mission is a hinge point. But that prayer set me on a different trajectory post-mission. And the fact that it was from heaven, it wasn't from my parents, it wasn't from my own desires, it wasn't from my talent. I poured everything into those prayers. They were real. And when heaven opened for me and I had a feeling in my room, it was unmistakable, that gave me the confidence, go talk to the coaches, go for it.
Yeah, how cool is that?
It changed my everything.
It actually cracks me up when I think about it, because my experience was the opposite. I was praying that sports was right for me, and I got cut. So like, you know, you go back and I look back and it was exactly what I needed, you know, but that like
put you on your trajectory.
That idea that, you know, there's a plan and that life is happening for us and it's not happening to us, and you got to have that faith and that trust. But there are times where it's like more distinct than other times. There are times where it's like, you got to go, you know, and it feels
I've had
like
answers to my prayers throughout my life. I've always had faith in God. I haven't always been perfect, but I've always known that He is there.
Yeah.
And reaching out in, you know, for a week and a half, dedicated prayers, like I was giving it everything I had in my soul. And he responded.
It had to have allowed you to play with so much certainty.
I knew I was supposed to be there.
Like there's something about saying like, this is exactly where I need to be.
Yeah.
And you don't need to make any more decisions. The decision's been made, and that had to have played a factor into how you showed up and the energy and the, you know, the performance of just showing up with complete certainty and confidence.
That took away the worry. There was still worry and stress. It was really hard. Like, to go from walk on, you're going from zero to hero pretty quick. And I just learned from that experience of walking on that it was the greatest gift that anyone could have ever given me, is for me to realize that all of life is walking on. It doesn't matter if you're an All-American, if you're super talented, you'd graduate from Harvard MBA school. None of that really matters. You got to go prove it. And you prove it every day. And walking on is what, more than making the team, the progress of walking on, the application of it, the difficulty of it, the impossibility of it, and the miracle of it. Walking on has changed my life.
It's pretty special.
Yeah.
That there is like that walk on hustle that you
Big
see
time.
people that like can do that can kind of do anything. You know, it's a trait of resilience and belief.
There's so much resilience. Yeah. If you're going to do it, you got to have that.
Yeah. So you go, you know, obviously had a great career, but talk to me about that freshman year. Like you kind of came in and like got after it.
Yeah. I was able to play. I remember first game, we go down to New Mexico, we play, and with 2 minutes left, Coach Chow says, "All right, Chad, go in the game." And I was like, okay. And I remember just being in the game with the game on the line, and I couldn't believe that they wanted me out there.
It wasn't like a blowout.
It was, I think it was 31-34. We won the game barely.
It was still a game.
Yeah. And I couldn't believe they wanted me out there in the game. And I think it was probably the 6th game of the year. We played Notre Dame. Terrence Salone was our starting tight end. He was out for some reason. I started against the #1 team in the country, Notre Dame.
As a freshman.
And Tom Young is the quarterback that game because we had some injuries. I remember catching 4 or 5 or 6 balls thinking,
This is it.
This is good stuff. And then at the end of that year, one of the last games, we're playing UTEP. And this whole time I've walked on, I also had a dream of jumping over someone on the football field. So combining my high jump skills with football And I would tell my teammates, like, hey, I want to jump over something. They're like, bro, you should worry about making the team first. Like, I know, but Michelle and I were dating, and I told her how much I wanted to jump over someone. Well, it happened at the end of that year where I caught a ball across the middle, ran down the sideline, safety came to make a tackle, and I jumped over him. He didn't touch me, and I ran around. I went bananas.
You loved it.
It was so great. My brothers were sitting right on the sideline where I jumped too. And in the clip, you can see him stand up like, oh my gosh. Well, that's how I was feeling. And it was not until that night I realized I didn't plan my steps. I wasn't afraid of getting hurt. It just happened. And the reason it happened is I was thinking about it so much. It was in my heart. It was in my mind. And when it came out of me, it was just the greatest thing ever.
And it kind of became a part do, right?
That was my move.
That was your brand. It was just
Lavelle did not like it.
He's just jumping on people.
He was like, don't do that. I think it was the next game or 2 games later, we're in the bowl game, play Ohio State. I jump over the DB, middle linebacker hits me. I go flying higher in the air, land on my shoulder, separate my shoulder. And after that game, Lavelle's like, I told you.
He didn't like that.
Don't do it anymore.
He didn't like that.
So I didn't do it once my sophomore year. I was true to my word to him. Okay, I won't jump. But Coach French, our offensive line coach, came to me and was like, hey, what's the matter with you this year? Last year, you were jumping over people and making plays. And this year, I'm like, I wanted to fight him. I was so mad. But there was a kernel of truth in what he was saying to me. There was something in me that I wasn't playing with my entire heart and soul. In football, you have to.
That year.
So, yeah, that was my sophomore year.
What do you think it was?
I thought I was trying my best.
Yeah.
And I went in and talked to Lavelle. I was like, hey, Coach French is giving me grief, man. And Lavelle laughed. He's like, oh, don't worry about that. You're doing great.
So you had a great year.
I had a great year.
Yeah.
And so my junior year, I just made a commitment. I will jump over everyone I can. And so I started, even in stupid times, like, why are you jumping right there? It didn't matter.
You just wanted
I was coming from right there. And I was playing like with everything I had.
So it was symbolic for you. It was like, I'm all in. Like I'm willing to go lay it on the line.
Yeah. Pig at breakfast.
Yeah.
All in.
So fun, man. So you go through, obviously, go play your career. When did you and Michelle get married? Like how did that come about? Like I know she was a big time athlete. Like
she was big time. She was a 2-time All-American volleyball player at BYU. So when I met her as I'm walking on that summer, I'm starting to date her, and her teammates are coming up to me saying, do you know who she is? She's 2-time, like she's an All-American. She's the best volleyball player in the country.
Why is she spending time with this scrub?
So we're watching you, buddy. And I was like, duly noted. I got the message. And so I started to become aware of who she was. Well, that season, my freshman year, her senior year, I got to watch her play, and she was the best volleyball player in the country.
She's that good.
Yeah. Her setter went on to play in the Olympics. Those two were amazing. So I was just watching her going, holy cow. And so we fell in love. We got married in May of that year. So, 9-10 months later. And so going into my sophomore year, and Michelle's with me from then on.
How fun is that to like be able to see each other's careers in
Way
athletics,
I know. I'm glad I got to watch her play.
Yeah, that you get to cheer for. I know like Chels played volleyball through college, and like
how fun is that?
It was so fun for me to show up and just like see her in her element and see her shine, and how hard she's working, and so
see your family in the stands.
Yeah,
cheering.
it's kind of one of those tiny little windows. It's there and it's gone. It's like this little window in life. So it's cool. You guys got to share that.
Yeah, love that.
So you go, play through college. Really great college career, 4-year starter.
Yep.
Talk to me about that transition between like, I'm going to go try to be a professional football player.
Yeah. Starting my sophomore year, since Tom Young was one of our quarterbacks, his brother Steve that year won the Super Bowl over the Chargers and was the NFL MVP, and I think Super Bowl MVP.
He was the guy.
Yeah. And so after my freshman year, I'm doing a parade with Tom Young and Bryce Doman in Orem. And Steve's there at the end, and afterwards we go and grab a hamburger together. And And I'm just blown away. This is Steve Young. I've seen him like,
he's a legend.
Yeah. And he says, hey, do you ever want to play catch? Sometimes I got to throw the ball. And I was like, I will catch the ball for you whenever, wherever. Just let me know. So starting my sophomore year at BYU, I started catching balls from Steve Young and lifting weights with him. And it was in those times that he would just talk and say, hey, this is what Brent Jones does, his great tight end from the 49ers, on this route. And he says in the weight room, have you ever been to Lake Powell? I'm like, yeah, I've been in Lake Powell. I went as a scouts and with my family. He's like, will you come down with us? I'm like, sure. So Michelle and I went with he and a big group, Lee Johnson and a bunch of friends. And so he is 10 years older than me.
He took you under his wing. He took
me under his wing.
He just always just knew you were special? Like, what was
I have no idea.
What was about it,
I don't know. It was great lifting weights with him because I thought I was a hard worker, and I saw from him this stubborn, older football player willing to grind, and it took me to a different level. Here I was thinking I'm working hard, and here he is.
Yeah.
And we'd go and run, and he was still so fast. All those things were just changing my brain, how I looked at football and what it took
to be a professional athlete. Yeah.
And so when I finally got to the point after my senior year, I'm getting ready for the pros, he was still right there giving great advice and talking. I did not get drafted. I signed with the Philadelphia Eagles as a free agent. I wanted to go to the 49ers bad. I'd love to finish his career with him.
Yeah.
And he just said, all right. I remember being in the training room at BYU. And he said, okay, now is the time you need to put all of it to the test. The faith that you have, you put it to the test. And he was talking about the difficulty of pro football, what it takes to make it. This is after 3 years of like playing catch with him, working with him, lifting weights, running. And he got serious and he was like, all right, bro.
This is it.
You put your faith on the line, all of it, and you go for it. And so he was a perfect mentor. And the fact that I didn't go to the 49ers, that I went to the Philadelphia Eagles and had to make it out there, it just made it even better.
Yeah.
That year, I caught a touchdown pass to beat the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football, and he was getting ready to come out onto the field. I can't remember who they were playing, but they were in a tunnel. They were watching our game finish in the tunnel, saw me catch the game winner, and he was just like,
so
no
fired
way.
up. Yeah, he's got to be so pumped up for you. It's like
we worked on that route. It was a 322 Y stick nod. So he talked about Brent Jones running that route. We did it in the summer, and there it worked in a game to beat the Cowboys. And he's just like,
do you ever wonder why you've had mentors like that? Because you've always had those in your career. I think about the Frazier Bullocks.
Yeah.
I think about the Nick Greers, the Steve Youngs, your big brother, the Andy Reeds.
Right.
You've had people in your life that just always believed in you.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever wondered like why?
Oh man, I think about that all the time.
Because I don't know. I look at from the outside and it's you've always had people that have believed in you.
Yeah. Yeah. So grateful.
It's a gift.
I wrote a book. The title of the book is Surround Yourself with Greatness. I feel like one of the gifts my parents gave me is to always be grateful for the people around you. Don't ever act like you're the big shot. Don't ever act like it's all you, because it's not. Like, you certainly take your talents. You certainly give your best effort. But look at all the people around you that are supporting you and loving you and helping you. And it's really humbling.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for the Steves and the Andys and the Kent Watsons, my mission president. First is my wife, Michelle. But it's like
always believed in you.
Yeah. So I just feel surrounded by so many good people.
Yeah.
You too. I mean, you got a heart of gold. And I moved into your neighborhood and same thing. You were authentic. You were real. You were friendly. You were kind. All those things that are important in life. That meant so much to me. You open your house, your family.
I mean, we think back about that a lot. I did one of these with Ty Mattingly, and we think about like a Ty Mattingly and a Chad Lewis and a Dave Decker and an Alex Dunn and a Mike Littledyke and
amazing guys,
you know, and these leaders that were a decade older than me, you know, that kind of just held my hand, and like they're really good models of what it's like to be a professional, you know, all of them so successful in their different careers, and also like what it's like to stay married, what it's like to raise kids, what it's like to, you know, maintain your faith. Like that, me and Chelsea, we think about this stuff a lot. And we're just like, man, God is so good, you know. You just, there's some of that stuff you can't control. I didn't choose any of that stuff. I didn't choose to have the Lewises move in next door, you know, but you did. And yeah, I've seen that in my life, and I wonder about it a lot. I'm like, man, how did I end up with the Todd Peterson as my boss when I'm 24 and
Todd
like
is
at a moldable age, you know? And so go, you know, getting back to the career, talk to me about being a professional athlete. Whew. And like the difference between being a professional athlete and a college athlete.
Speed. Everyone in the pros is fast. Talent. Everyone's talented. The biggest difference is speed. Like you go to practice and it's just woof. Everyone is rolling fast. Linemen, offense, defensive linemen are super quick. And you just have to just play at that speed. There's a saying I learned as a missionary in Taiwan, and it's about pure gold, which you talked about at the beginning. True gold does not fear the refiner's fire. It's my favorite Chinese saying, 真金不怕火炼. True gold does not fear the refiner's fire. I knew going in. I knew going in it was going to be white hot. I knew it was going to be an uncomfortable environment. I knew it was going to be going against the best football players in the world. I knew it was going to be intense. Ty Detmer was the quarterback, so I had someone there who was like looking out for me. I didn't get to play with him at BYU. I was younger. And having a coach, John Gruden, he was our offensive coordinator.
You loved Gruden, didn't you?
Yeah, I loved him. Loved Gruden. Yeah. He believed in me early on. Like first practice, he's like, I like the way you run routes.
Talk to me about
I love you, man.
Talk to me about, you know, we're bouncing around, but talk to me about John Gruden. I can't not go there because he's such a character.
He's a character.
Everybody looks at him from the outside looking in, and somewhat polarizing, you know, but the people who play for him loved him. So
I love John Gruden.
Talk to me about John Gruden.
First time I met him was talking during draft day, and it's in the 5th round, and the Eagles called, and 14 other teams called and said, hey, we might draft you, we might not, but we want you in camp. Will you come to our camp? So I had options. As a free agent, it's almost a gift. You get to make a quick decision and pick where you want to go.
Where you're going to fit.
And I knew where every tight end was on every team. My agent, Don Yee, helped me with that. I knew what system of offense every team run. I knew what offensive coordinators were there and what quarterbacks were there. And for all those reasons, the Philadelphia Eagles were a perfect match for me. John Gruden was the offensive coordinator running the West Coast offense. Ty Detmer was the quarterback running what I was already familiar with at BYU. And when I was going back and forth with the Chiefs and the Eagles, I remember Gruden jumping on the phone saying, bro, we need you to come out here. I've seen you on tape. You're a sweet player. Let's go. I love you, man.
He wanted you.
You know, he's a great salesman, but he lives with that kind of energy.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I was like, let's go. And so I chose to go to the Philadelphia Eagles, went out to minicamp. First camp, I remember doing some drills, and Rodney Peete was one of our quarterbacks as well. And he threw me a pass. I caught it, came back to the huddle, and he said, I love how you run routes. It's so friendly to me as a quarterback.
Rodney Peete.
Wow. And I'm like, all right, bro. I love hearing that stuff. Like the fact that I was coming back, I was reducing my routes, not fading away from him. I was coming back to the quarterback. I just felt immediately like,
I can do this.
Like I might have a home here. And I remember talking to John Gruden, who was a young buck on the 49ers staff. So he knew Steve Young early on. And so we made that connection, and I was always talking to Gruden about everything. Fast forward a couple months to training camp. A lot of good things have happened, but we get to training camp, and I was like, I'm walking to the cafeteria, and it was just John Gruden and I on the sidewalk, and I was like, Gruden, bro, am I going to make this team? I've got a baby girl, and my wife is pregnant, and we got another girl on the way. Like, this means everything to me. Am I going to make this team? He's like, hey, aren't you an old rookie? And I was like, yeah, I'm an old rookie. He said, didn't you go on like a mission or something like that? I said, yeah, I went to Taiwan for 2 years. I speak Chinese. He said, okay, so you're an old rookie, right? And I was like, yeah. He said, I want you to act like it. I don't want you to act like these 20-year-old kids. You've been other places. You've been on a mission, speak another language. I want you to act like that. And then he walked off.
Wow.
And I was like, so am I going to make the team or what? And what he was saying was, you bring your maturity. You bring everything you got to practice. And you play with that fire. And if you do that, you're going to make this team. That's what he was saying to me by saying, you're an old rookie, act like it. I love him. I mean, he called plays for me to be successful. He called the personnel package for me. One of them was Cougar Chad personnel. I want Cougar Chad personnel in the game. and it was confidence building for me. Maybe some of my teammates didn't like it when, you say he's polarizing. He's challenging.
Yeah.
He challenges everybody every day to be your best. The route I caught the game-winning touchdown to beat the Cowboys was, I think it was red right, close, F left, 322, Y stick nod, Z stop. And I saw him years later getting ready for a Monday Night Football game in San Francisco. And I was like, Gruden, what's up, bro? He was on the set at practice at 49ers Park. And I walked up to where, he was prepping for the game. And before he said anything, he pulled out a piece of paper and he wrote down, he diagrammed the play with the motion and everything. And he was like, bro, there you go.
He's kind of that type of mind, though,
he
right?
He remembered everything.
Photographic memory.
Photographic.
And just a junkie.
He loves football.
Loves film, loves football.
He loves it all.
Everything.
So it was the coolest way for him to say,
I know, I see you.
There it is, bro.
It's so
fun.
I
still have that paper. I need to frame that.
You gotta do something with that.
Yeah,
that's
cool.
Special.
I know. He was fun. Really, I loved him. He was great.
What other coaches impacted you along the way? What other coaches were the ones that, like, you look back and you say, man, that person?
I go back to my high school coach, Tom Rabb, who I'm a junior on the team. We're in state playoffs. We had a great team. We ended up taking state. First time in 19 years, Orem High took state. I'm a junior. I'm only on the punt return team, and I'm not very good at that. And I remember in practice, he gathered us as we're finishing practice. He said, I want you guys to think about something. I need every one of you guys. If you're not starter, I need you yelling on the sideline. I need your hearts. If it's to be, it's up to me. If you're not starting, I need you doing your best at whatever you're doing for this team. And that changed. It changed the way I played football, because I thought my role on the sideline for that team as a junior was really important, to pump those dudes up. When I was a senior, it was, if it's to be, it's up to me. Like, I got to make plays if we're going to win.
Yeah.
When I'm walking on, if it's to be, like, it's up to me. I got to make plays. At Lehigh University, sweaty, hot training camp, I have to make plays. I'm glad. So Tom Rabb was the greatest high school football coach in the world for me. And then I go to BYU and I have Lavelle Edwards, who's
Lavelle your guy.
He's the greatest coach ever.
You got so many of those coaches, but was Lavelle the one that impacted you the most?
Big time. Loved him.
And what
when
do you think
I was having a hard time,
yeah, what was so special about Lavelle?
His door was open at all times. I could pop in, and I was a nobody. I could pop in and talk to him. If I was worried about something, I could say, hey, Coach French, he's doesn't think I'm playing great. And he laughed. He's like, oh, man, Chad, you're playing great. don't worry about that. To have the head coach, Lavelle of all people, who's like, he was a legend when I played for him.
Yeah.
To have him give me that kind of confidence
Believe
and
in you.
assurance. Yeah,
Yeah.
total belief. And his wife, Patty, they were a package deal. And she was the same way. It was my sophomore year. There was a time we just got beat by Colorado State. Itulamili and I we were good tight ends, but we weren't getting a lot of passes. Patty went in the papers and said, they need to start throwing to the tight end more.
Come on.
I was like, yeah, Patty.
Come on.
And when they did, I was like, Patty, I will love you forever. And her and Lavelle were a package deal.
They were all in.
Her support of me personally and as a player meant just as much as Lavelle's support and belief in me as a player.
What do you think that is, though? Like, there's this pattern of like people being drawn to you. Like, what do you attribute that to?
I have no idea about that. All I know is I was in the presence of absolute
but you
greatness.
see that like a lot. You know what I mean? Like, and I think it's something about you. I think it's like, because I know, our family was attracted to you and Michelle. Like, it was just, we were drawn to
that's nice.
how you show up. We're drawn to, little things. I remember we did this neighborhood party, and you guys were the first ones there to set up. We go have this party, and you're the last one to leave. And it's not you guys, it's all of your kids. And there was just little things that we'd noticed that were just like, man, the Lewises are doing something. Like, me and Chelsea to have these conversations where we're like, the Lewises are doing something right. There's something that they're doing inside those walls, that these kids show up and they're humble and they work hard and they're grateful and they say thank you. One other just data point, your son just got home off his mission, Jeff. And, he's a gentle giant. Like, he's sweet. Out of any of your kids that has like that, like body, he's a big boy, but he's a grinder. Like, he is a hard worker. And I remember we moved into our new house and we hired these professional movers, and they were trash. Like, they were, looking for any excuse not to grind. And Jeff is like a 16-year-old with two of his buddies that he recruited. They probably did 5 times as much work as the professional movers. And I'm pinging you today saying, hey, does Jeff want a job? Just because kind of what you get. But I think there's something there, and I don't, have you broken it down? Like, why is it that,
here's
people
what
are drawn to you?
I would say she's really good, and her humility is real. And she has a way of focusing on each person in our family and just bringing it back to like a real level. Her ability to do that is why you see the sweetness in our kids, that they're kind and they're grateful. And she's always been able to do that. So when I was playing football, she was the one raising those kids and, making sacrifice. Look, she was invited to play on the national volleyball team, first the B team and then possibly the A team. Terry Liskevich was the coach at the time, found out we were going to get married and ended up writing her back saying, don't worry about coming and playing on the team. Just get married, have a great life. She was unbelievable. And I feel like she put all that on the shelf, all of her talents, to raise a family. It's everything to her. I say it's everything to me, and I mean it. She says it's everything to her, and she lives it.
No, it's different.
So
like, it's 100% different, It's a different commitment.
Yeah.
Like, and, and I think there's magic in that, there's differences in that relationship, but it is like a real commitment.
Yeah.
Jumping back to being a professional, who were the professionals that inspired you? Like, when you were in your career and you look up, you mentioned the Steve Youngs, but who are the guys that you said that's what sums up being a professional?
Yeah, Steve Young definitely is, because I was with him before I got there. And then once I get to the Philadelphia Eagles, it was Ty Detmer. Ty was the starting quarterback on a team that we weren't great. And he took a lot of abuse from the fans as we went through that season. That season, we bounced from Ty Detmer to Rodney Peete, back to Ty Detmer, I think Rodney, and then Bobby Hoying came and finished the year. So we were bouncing around, and all through that, Ty was this man of total pure class. We played the 49ers on Monday Night Football in Philadelphia. We got ripped. Ty threw 3 interceptions in that game. The press is coming after him, and he was nothing but stand-up class.
Because Philly's a tough place to play. Like, if you're not getting it done.
Philly's the toughest place to play.
Yeah, like.
If you're working hard, they love you. If you're not getting it done, they will boo the heck out of you.
They're hard. Yeah, they're hard.
They love to boo.
Yeah.
And so I saw this man, Ty Detmer, in the locker room, at home with his family, on the practice field, in games. He was a warrior in games. I remember we played the Minnesota Vikings and threw a pass to Ricky Waters, who was an incredibly talented running back. He was with the 49ers, came to the Eagles, and Ricky didn't make a catch going down the seam. And they got in a little fight on the sidelines. And Ty was yelling at Ricky. Ty's he's not a big dude. And he was like a giant. And I remember just looking at him thinking, I will go wherever that dude
for
goes.
that guy. Yeah.
I'll battle for him. Wherever he throws the ball, I will go get it.
So Ty Detmer, who else?
Ty Detmer. The next year, I went to the St. Louis Rams. I was on the Rams team, the greatest show on turf with Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, all those guys. And Kurt Warner was just the same. He was like Ty, like just stand-up dude, on the field, off the field, practice, game. It didn't matter. He was like, he was unbelievable. I love him. I came back to the Philadelphia Eagles. One of our quarterbacks was Doug Peterson. Same thing. Guy became head coach of the Eagles, won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Over the Patriots. And Doug is similar. That was Andy Reid's first year. I got to know Andy close. I played with him for 7 years, and Andy became one of those guys in my life. I mean,
just so important.
So important. Professional, class, hardworking. One of his greatest lines ever. We started the season 0-2. We were a Super Bowl contending team. We got beat by the Buccaneers and the Patriots. And he said, you guys, take off your tuxedos, put on your overalls, and get to work. We have a really good team. We're going to be good. We're going to be fine. But get to work. And that's just like, he's so down to earth, normal, but a genius at the same time. The greatest play caller, the greatest coach.
I mean, it's easy to look back now with the Super Bowl rings and the Chiefs and everything and just say, yeah, he was a genius.
He's a genius.
But in the moment, I mean, he ended up, getting let go from Philly. You know what I mean? But as you look at his career since, he's kind of won everywhere he's gone. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, winning has just followed Andy, which is so fun.
And the best thing about it is wherever he is, whether he's, with the Green Bay Packers starting his career, Brett Favre loved the heck out of Andy Reid, who was, a tight end coach and then a quarterback coach. And he was funny. He was endearing. He was real. He comes to the Philadelphia Eagles, takes the Eagles to the Super Bowl. And then he bounces and goes to the Kansas City Chiefs, takes them to the Super Bowl, and now has, several Super Bowl rings with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And wherever he goes, he has people that love him because he treats people right. He's honest. He communicates. He just brings everything down to this principle. Just treat people how you're supposed to treat them. Just, if you're on this squad, I want you to be just as cool to me as you are. I want you to treat the people in the cafeteria, the janitors that clean our locker room, all the same. If you can't do that, you got to go to another team. You can't play here. He just wants everyone to be good, to work hard, do your job. Just worry about your own stuff, do your job. And he just keeps breaking it down. And by breaking it down, you take the pressure off of having to make Superman plays.
Yeah.
No. Don't worry about doing superhuman stuff. Just do your job. And he always breaks things down to just blocking, tackling, catching, playing ball.
Yeah. Talk to me about the hard times. Because all we've talked about's the good. And I think anybody who looks at your career would see kind of this linear line of like Chad shows up as a freshman. He's the walk-on, makes the team.
Yeah.
Starts as a freshman all the way through.
Yeah.
You know, Chad doesn't get drafted, starts as a rookie, has a long, like, talk to me, but when did it not work? Like, what was the toughest points in your career?
There were times it didn't work. Getting cut, I played my first year, and then in the second game of my second year, I broke my ankle. I was cut the next day. That was a really tough time. And Michelle and I came back to Provo, and I was bound and determined to get healthy. And there were people that looked at me with pity, like, oh, man, you need to move on with your life. You had a good run. And I remember just Michelle and I talking like, we can still do this. Like, we want to still do this. I still feel good about doing this. And the fact that she was right there with me made it possible. But that was definitely a very challenging time.
I mean, the league is so hard to get into as is.
And when you get bounced, it's so hard to get back.
It's so hard to get back, you know, because there's always this new, fresh, healthy crop of people that are vying to get
lined up, waiting to get in the door.
Yeah. So you got cut. What other times in your career was it like, man, that's tough?
Well, I tore the Liz Frank ligament right before the Super Bowl. So catching a touchdown pass at the end of the NFC Championship game. And I was not able to play in the Super Bowl. And for whatever reason, I think it was divine. I had a blessing the night before the game by my dad. I had an injured tricep, so he gave me a blessing. And when I tore the Liz Frank ligament, which could have been one of those career enders, I ended up playing the next year. It also could have been one of those Uncle Rico moments where, man, if I wouldn't have torn my Liz Frank, I would have been a Super Bowl MVP. It wasn't. It was very disappointing, and it was heartbreaking. But there was something about it that...
some peace.
There was total peace.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in the end zone thinking, just feeling total peace. Like, we're going to the Super Bowl. I'm not going to be able to play in the Super Bowl. And it's okay.
What a gift.
I remember thinking about my dad and his stroke and his loss of health. And he never complained about that, still to this day. Like, he just soldiers on. And how could I cry about tearing my Liz Frank if my dad wasn't crying about, like, his life being completely altered from a stroke? So there was a lot that went into that. But I look at that moment, like, that could have crushed. It could have been really, really bad. But I was surrounded by my family. They were right there. I was surrounded by so much goodness that lifted and carried me through a really hard time. And that was a tough time, though. Going to the Super Bowl, not being able to play.
Yeah. Because you'd played so well up until that point.
Yeah. And I realized
you were all pro multiple years, right?
I was 3-time all pro.
Yeah. So, I mean, at that point in your career, you were Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
Like, so to not be able to play.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
I know.
Talk to me about T.O.
Terrell Owens was the hardest working player I've ever seen. We've talked about playing with your heart and soul. That guy came to work and gave every ounce of. He was very gifted, very talented. He gave it all in practice. So much so that he raised and lifted the competition of every single person on our team. That was his impact on our team was massive. Everyone lifted. Everyone rose up.
I remember, there was, and this is, a young kid, but he had this agent and there was, he's working to get a contract and he kind of got framed in the media. It's not really a team guy. But when I talked to you, that just was not the case. Like he elevated the team.
He has definitely some of the most talent and gifts that I've seen. He also has weaknesses that balance out his gifts. And when he goes back and forth in there, sometimes crazy things happen. And it was needing to get a new contract in Philadelphia where everything went haywire, where he ended up getting kicked off of the Philadelphia Eagles, picked up by the Cowboys, had several years there and went on several other teams. But when he was in it,
yeah,
and he was rolling, he was completely unstoppable. And he just wanted more passes. Not because he wanted more passes. He wanted more passes to win the game.
Because he just knew he could.
He was so hungry. Just throw it to me. We will score. And it was so cool to see that talent and gift and motor. And to see him catch a ball in practice and rip it for 40, jog back to the huddle and do it again for hours. That, like, the energy in his tank, if you could bottle that. Phew, he's amazing. And it hurt me when he and Donovan McNabb, my quarterback, when their relationship went south because they were tight. We were rolling. It was like, we're going to win 5 Super Bowls. Let's go.
I mean, when I think about Donovan McNabb and Chad Lewis and T.O., you guys had some weapons.
Brian Westbrook, and then defense, Brian Dawkins, Bobby Taylor, Troy Vincent,
Gary,
Jeremiah Trotter. We had guys.
Yeah.
David Akers is a kicker. We had weapons everywhere. Andy was head coach. I felt like we were poised to go for several runs at it.
Yeah.
And when their relationship fell apart that next year, that hurt me because I love both those guys. And it's just something that happens in pro sports, happens in life.
That happens in life.
And you just work through it and you just make the most of it and you just try your best. And
talk to me about BYU and what BYU's meant to you and your family. And
yeah. Tom Homo asked me to come back and work at BYU. And I didn't want to. I didn't want BYU to become a job. I love BYU. And I kind of wanted my mind to keep it as this thing that I love so much. And when I finally went in and talked with Tom, and I said, Tom, what do you want me to do? And we talked about it. And I got to work, and I got to work with him and with everyone else down there. It opened another window in my life that I didn't know I had. And I loved BYU again for all the same reasons and then even more reasons. And I found out that I had to use my talents, my gifts every day. I had to join forces with people and work with them. And it's not always perfect. It's not always rosy. Like, you have to learn to work with people, and they have to learn to work with me.
Yeah.
And when we make music together, it's the greatest thing ever. I love it that Michelle is a part of it. I love it that all my kids are a part of it. I love it that BYU means more than just school or just sports. It's like, it's the church, it's sports, school, all wrapped together, and it means a lot. And I love being there.
Talk to me about faith and how that factors into the equation.
Faith it's just a word of action. And I'm grateful that I was gifted and blessed as a little kid with faith, that I've always believed that Heavenly Father is real. I've always believed that Jesus Christ is real. I've always believed that Joseph Smith is a true prophet. I've always believed that the Book of Mormon is true. And going through life, I've always had that faith. That doesn't mean that I've lived a perfect life, but it means that I've always known that was real. That stuff was real. So when I put work or football or family into the same equation, faith is what makes it work. Like, it's going to be okay. And even through the hard times, breaking my foot, breaking my ankle, tearing my Liz Frank, getting cut, having to move, disappointments in life. Here's one small example. Jeff is serving his mission in the Philippines. He gets an amoeba, a parasite. He deals with it for 7 months. Finally, after losing 65 pounds, he calls and he's broke. And he said, I'm hurting bad. We bring him home, take him to an infectious disease specialist. We had a faith that things were going to be okay. Didn't know how. And Michelle asked the surgeons, I would like him to get a colonoscopy. The infectious disease specialist said, that's overkill. I don't think we need to do that, but you can do it if you want. She said, I really want. So he gets a colonoscopy. In the colonoscopy, they find that Jeff has a large polyp the size of a large marble, unrelated to the parasite. And Brett Thorpe, our neighbor and surgeon, said, this is why Jeff is home from his mission. And this is the story that I told last year to the Buffalo Bills. Sean McDermott, the head coach, was on our staff with the Eagles, and he said, I want you to come out and I want you to talk to my team. And I didn't take long, but I told this story. I said, Jeff came home from his mission in the Philippines. And in this process of trying to get him healthy, they found this massive polyp. They cut it out. It tested positive for cancer. They said it would have turned into stage 4 colon cancer in 5 years. They call colon cancer the silent killer because you don't know you have it until
It's too late.
it's too late.
Yeah, and no one's getting colonoscopy at his age.
So I told the Bills that God sent my son to a place on the planet where he could get sick enough, quick enough, that at 19 years old, he needs a colonoscopy that saved his life. Well, you ask about faith. Faith is all part of that. Like, I just feel from that God has us, not just Jeff as a missionary, but God has all of us in his hands. He's aware of the details of our lives. Everything. He totally cares. It doesn't mean that he's going to answer things or solve things or save us immediately. He's going to let us grind and work and pray and persevere and cry because we're on this planet and it's a mortal planet. We're all going to die. He wants us to believe in him, to love him, and to follow him. And faith was all part of Jeff's miraculous healing, finding the polyp, getting it out of his body, and going back and finish his mission. That was my small message to the Buffalo Bills last year, that I am profoundly grateful that God, in his kindness, saved Jeff's life and did it in a way that to all of us that were witnessing it was a pure miracle. It was, I'm a year later, I'm still blown away that thing happened. So my faith is all a part of that. It's all mixed in. It's just there. I know God, he loves us so much that he's in the details of our lives.
Yo. I mean, I look at your life and it feels like your life has been guided. Like it feels like, that there was some platform or something bigger than football. And so, I just look at like these steps. It's really fun to watch.
That's cool.
Super proud to have you as a friend. Before we finish up, tell me your philosophy on leadership. What is it to be a leader?
Oh man, that's such a good question. There's so much about leadership. I think to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. You got to follow the right people. And so I feel like I was a good leader on the Philadelphia Eagles football team. But it's because I was, in a way, a good follower. I was a follower of Andy, the principles of hard work. I had teammates that were just unbelievably cool. Jeff Thomason, Mike Bartram, these guys were just, they would make me laugh in practice, in meetings, in games. They'd get in games, they were warriors. And I thought they were leaders. I thought Donovan was a great leader. Donovan was so hilarious in practice, in leading up to games, that it took the pressure off of people. I thought Ty Detmer was an amazing leader because of his toughness and class. And I look at Andy Reid like one of the greatest leaders in the history of the NFL, the history. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's going to be.
For sure.
But his ability to lead, and he's a great follower too. Like he's a follower of Christ. He's not afraid of that. He doesn't wear it on his sleeves. He doesn't tell people like how they need to live their lives. But if you listen to him talk, he's a great leader, I think, because he's a great follower.
Oh, great Andy Reid story. So I got a good buddy that kind of went through some really hard times with addictions and kind of worked his way back, into, society, and has had real fantastic career and, re-engaged with his faith. But I think he was in Hawaii, if I'm getting the story right. And he rolls into Hawaii, and Andy Reid's, in the temple. And he's hanging out, talking to Andy, and ends up becoming good buddies with Andy. And Andy invites him out to the Chiefs games. And he ends up being a real important, and this is just, and my friend, he would say Andy is his friend. And,
that's cool.
Has spent, numerous different weekends with Andy and his wife. And it's just this kind of chance interaction. But I see these things from the outside, and I'm like, that's what I aspire to be. You know what I mean? I aspire to be a leader like that. That's so cool. Authentic and so real.
Yeah.
So personable. And so that was special.
One leader that I got to see up close and in person was Vi Sikahema. We moved to Philadelphia. Vi was our bishop in Philadelphia. And so we would have dinner at his house probably twice a week for my career. We lived close by. And I just saw him and his wife, Keala. I saw how he was with his family, saw how he was as a leader in the church, saw how he was as a follower of Christ. That was a real leader. And as a young married couple, Michelle and I we were in that family. We were part of his ohana. We were part of his family night. We were part of reading the scriptures together. We were part of, it was just like a golden age. And there he was, just completely embraced us.
No, that's so special.
And it was the most comfortable place on the planet to go into his house, have dinner, and hang out. We talk all night. And so my career, I got to be in that home, in that Sikahema home, and just be with one of the greatest dudes ever. And that was a life changer. Great leader.
Chad, we could go on all day. I'm going to cut it off. I admire you guys so much. I admire you and Michelle. I admire your family. Love what you're about. Love how you live your life. Love how you let your light shine. Love how you love people.
Thanks.
I remember you taking some different leadership roles in the church after I left that community, that neighborhood. And I just, my very first thought was, man, those guys are so lucky to have Chad in that role.
Oh, that's cool.
Just because you lead with your heart and you love people. And I just think that, that is so needed in the world.
That's cool.
Thanks. Somebody that loves people and believes in people and just, shows up and is authentic. And I think, those
sweet.
Are traits that you guys have that, I know we aspire to have. Chelsea and I, as we look up to different people that we say, that's the type of, people we want to be and parents we want to be, and kind of, just we admire you guys so much. So thank you for coming in. Cool. Love hearing your story.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, brother.